Hello and welcome to Graduate Theory. Please welcome to the show, Joe Wehbe.
Thanks very much, James. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's fantastic to have you on, mate. You're certainly someone that I look up to and someone that's really inspired the creation of this podcast. So it's very cool to have you on and hear your insights because you're certainly very knowledgeable. We've done a lot of things. So looking forward to it. One thing I want to start off with is the book that's just come out, 18 and Lost. Fantastic achievement. I want to ask about the name or the blurb on the back. Seth Godin is on there. So I want to ask, we can talk about the book and all that stuff, but I want to start with, there it is there. Perfect. So I want to start with.
We should have it close by, mate.
Yeah, for sure. I want to start with how did you get this guy on the back? What was your kind of process? What's the whole story behind this? Because it is quite cool to have him on the back there.
Yeah, it is very cool. Yeah, and very lucky. Very lucky. But it wasn't accidental, obviously, too. And I don't have a personal relationship with him. But for anyone who's not familiar with him, Seth Godin is very prominent as a thought leader in marketing, in education, in post-industrial kind of world and careers and work, and written 20 best-selling books, started a bunch of kind of cool companies. Has a very kind of clear and meaningful message. So that's who he is, if anyone hasn't heard of him. And I guess we got it. I did a course at the organization that he co-founded. They co-founded a thing called the old MBA, and then this other organization, Akimbo, evolved around it, I believe. And it's very alternative education company. And I did a course there, and I did the course thinking I'd meet great people, and I knew that people like him were behind it. So I figured there's lots of relationships to actually be had with this organization beyond just learning some good stuff in the 1 week course. It's called the Emerging Leaders Program. If I hadn't done it, I wouldn't have met you.
Yeah.
I met Liam, who's a mutual friend of ours and collaborator, and that's how I met you. So there you go. And in the same way, I knew we were working on the book because I cared about education at the time going into it. And I was curious to see how they did things. So it was a learning opportunity for me in that sense, the model they did. And then I just knew that, they have so many people in their community that are useful. I knew that going in. So I was I always planned to do the course and then see what it was like and then add value to their organization where I could. And that was I hosted catch-up calls after, gave a lot of feedback, a lot of generous feedback, obviously stayed in touch with people there. And in the end, I had good contacts at the organization. And I explained to them, they knew about the book, and I explained to them the mission and why I thought, because it was in education, that someone like Seth's endorsement would go a long way, help us catalyze the book journey. Endorsement like that doesn't really sell books necessarily. It's not people hear about that and then they come find the book. Not really. But it helps, the credibility helps a lot. And it was also really nice because we did it with a group of people.
Yeah.
But that was basically the process. I don't know if everyone's now going to go start doing a bunch of Akimbo courses now that I've said that. Maybe they will. But also just got very lucky.
Yeah.
There's no incentive, but no guarantee. And that's why I was very strategic about that, obviously, but you were being genuine along the way is integral. I just genuinely enjoyed, I got so much out of it, how I met you and everything.
Yeah.
Again, that was one of the beautiful things that came out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a super interesting story. And I guess it's those things where you do one thing, it's that stuff you talk about with the doors, right? It's this kind of doing this course opens up opportunities that maybe you didn't expect or maybe you did expect when you first signed up, right?
Yeah, well, maybe. I suspected.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You can't really know.
No, definitely.
And that's why I think if I was just trying to do the whole thing, I know that guy's in that company or they know people and I'm only going to do it for that reason, then there's a bit of risk in that because if it doesn't come off, then whatever effort you put in, maybe unless you learn something, but if you get a lot out of the experiences you do and they help you kind of meet people who can move what you care about doing further. That's what I concentrate on because it's very holistic. You get a lot out of it, not just gunning for that one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I agree there. And I think that's cool. A good point about the genuineness of asking something like that and being involved. You joined the course because you wanted to get value and then these kind of things come out. It's almost not as the real reason why you joined, but it's an extra effect afterwards.
Yeah, I think the whole idea really is you want to be in rooms with great people. That's what I've learned. I rarely used to take up things like that when I was a bit younger. Things like that experience. And it's not always the right time. And like the theme of this podcast, right? The name is pretty indicative. So for people who are like early career maybe in the gap between finishing and getting into the workforce, if that's the average listener, there's this, it's very different to position maybe I'm in now where I have specific things that are my focus, like education. I work on things that are relate to education and careers. And so I like, it's deliberate, but then it always makes sense to be in the good rooms with people who also care about that, and being able to like find more people who like agree and align with what you care about is always like useful. Like you just don't know in the 3 years later, 5 years later, 10, you don't know like when something will happen. Like a relationship is such a good investment. And I knew that I was going to get a lot of relationships out of it. That's what attracted me to it. And that was probably one of them was like, that's like a moonshot. That they used Seth Godin, and very lucky he helped because I didn't speak to him. It was all through the and stuff. But in general, just I got so many great relationships out of it. So I knew I was going to get that for myself, but also the concept of adding value. If I'm in there adding value, being genuine, they're going to get something out of me. And so it's mutual, and it's not like mutually exclusive. Like you can just reciprocate, like you can both, it should always be two ways. Like it's actually a really obvious idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like
feel
get
like,
something out of it for yourself, but also make sure they get something out of it too. Leave everyone better off for having talked to you, and you'll get a lot back too. And that's really my approach to everything. And so far, it moves things faster, like things I care about. Yeah. It's interesting to think about.
No, that's cool. Because I feel like particularly with networking and stuff like that, I was thinking about this today, that sometimes when people are like, oh, you've got to go out there and network with people, you're trying to almost trick them to become friends with you so you can ask if they know, and then just leave.
Right?
Yeah. You're trying to get up the ladder of who you know, and just so you can be like the winner at the end sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas when it comes from that kind of place, I think it's easy to spot almost when someone's trying to like use you just for like to get a favor and they're not offering anything. And it's much easier to be like friends with someone when they're helping you and you're helping each other. And it's just like much more natural that way.
It really is. It's not always easy too. Like networking, I heard a podcast, I was a podcast listening to the other week, and the guy had someone on and he's, oh, you're the gun at networking. And then the guy said, don't call me that. He goes, everyone hates that word. Right? I don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
And like networking has connotations. Like different people will think different things when they hear the word networking.
Yeah.
But like stripping it back, the fundamentals of like people are the ultimate kind of resource is like at the core of it for me. People are the ultimate resource is what I strip it back to. And honestly, I'll just be honest. Like, so I've told you the story about that example and like my approach, always trying to be very add value and all that.
Yeah.
But that I definitely think I look at if I'm on Twitter or something like that, or I hear a name, or I definitely think, oh damn, if I knew that person, I could be able to do this. Like I could get the message out better. I could get the book out better. Like it's hard to switch that off. It's actually pretty human. I'll be very honest that I definitely have those thoughts. But it's funny that then, you start moving towards, all right, start to be strategic about how could I get in touch with it? And then I'd have to create value for them.
Yeah.
And so you're always reminded. And I think as long as you are your actions, not your thoughts. So as long as you like come back to a healthy way of doing it. And again, like you said, the filter is, and the feedback loop is like, you almost don't have a choice because it's actually really hard to get things by being transactional. You want to call it that? Like transactional is like just exchange for goods. Like you don't need to love the local baker. They're just happy if you give them money, they're happy to give you bread. Like it's transactional. It doesn't have to be a good relationship, but it can be. So like when it's transactional, like people know, and it's like a Tinder, is it like a transaction thing? Is it a hookup? Is it an exchange of goods? Or is it like genuine? And like you can't ask for too much too soon. In a dating interaction, you got to break it down into steps. They're not ready to marry you or anything like when someone meets you straight away. So if you just cold suggest to people that you have this kind of deep relationship or whatever, and they get bombarded with requests like that, then you just get ignored. Whereas if you break it down into steps and meet people where they're at, and say, all right, what would interest someone like this right now? Or what's something simple that they can say yes to? and that's opening the door, then it's very much similar to that. It's so easy to leverage people, and leverage can be a dirty word too, like network.
Yeah.
It's so easy to kind of get great advantage and resources out of people who you have a relationship with, and it doesn't have to be an exchange because you're friends.
Yeah.
And because like you mentioned my real estate experience, and even in real estate, because like any business, you get people happy to refer clients, gold, because you don't have to pay people necessarily to refer you clients. Like it's gold, word of mouth and referral partnerships. And just what I found doing that is like the people who really ended up giving me business were great friends. I became great friends with them. The ones who like weren't really that tight with, and we just didn't align, then it was like never as effective, because like you like someone, you also have trust with them. And trust is like really important when you're handing over someone.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to be paid for it. I just look after them. If you make an introduction to someone, all right, just be respectful to that person, things like that. And yeah, so I just things like that are really like, it's just what I learned through experience is like ultimately like the most productive relationships you have, you actually just end up getting along really well with them. That's what actually makes it sticky.
Yeah.
In the same way you can ask a friend for something you can't ask a stranger for, because you have a relationship. But then the online world kind of dilutes that a little bit. And sometimes we forget, but it all comes down to like genuine relationships and genuine relationship building.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. I think that's a great point, because you can't be, it's like what you were saying about the relationships. Like you're not going to ask someone like to get married on the first date. And once you get along and you both like each other, then it's now we can start to ask more things and we can do more stuff together.
Yeah.
I think there's many like business and networking, whatever, parallels, I think, between dating and real life.
Yeah.
So that I think that was a great example. One thing we spoke about before the podcast was Adam Grant's book, and you were talking about this idea where there's three types of people in networking or in friendships or whatever. There's kind of givers and takers and things like that. Could you elaborate on that a bit further?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, the book Give and Take by Adam Grant that you mentioned, I thought was really good. Aligned with a lot of things I've thought and written about too, which is why I loved it. And he talked about givers, matchers, and takers, as you said. So takers are always what's in it for me. So that's like, there always has to be something in it for me that's really obvious for me to be willing to help. So for example, if you said to me, present example, like, Joe, come on the podcast. If I was a taker and I couldn't see anything clear in it for me, am I going to get more clients? Am I going to get more leads? Am I going to get more exposure? Yeah, am I going to get some of those things? All right. Yeah, all right, I'll come on. Like a taker is, and they're trying to take the full value they can out of you without little regard for what goes in the other direction. So it's like, I don't really care about like this James guy. I'm just like, whatever, if I can go on there, get some more credibility with business client, whatever. Matches are like traders, like has to be an even exchange of value in both directions. And obviously like pretty like at the same time. So we're doing some promotion for the book at the moment. And a guy the other day go to me, someone introduced me to him. He has a podcast. I thought, all right, can we have a conversation? This is what I care about. It's what I'm trying to do. And he said, all right, you can come on my podcast, but I see you have a podcast too. And then maybe I can come on your podcast. So that's like a matcher. Like, all right, I'll let you come on mine if I can come on yours. And I was like, actually, my podcast is solo. Like I don't do guests, unfortunately. So we'll be able to do that. Yeah. And he goes, oh. And he goes, my podcast is slowing down at the moment. And
oh, wow.
Like, I can do it, but I'll send you the audio to edit or something. And I was like, no, mate, not interested.
Yeah.
That's an example of matcher, right? It has to go even in exchange. It has to happen at that point in time, mainly. And then third is givers. And givers are like, all right, here, I'll come on the podcast or I'll introduce you to this person without a really obvious or tangible thing to come back. If I know someone who could be an incredible guest here that might not respond to you directly, I can just introduce them to you and be like, but what's in that for Joe? How does James' podcast relate to me and all that? That's the thing. I think everyone's benefit is linked to everyone else in the big picture, but people don't really think about it. So even the giver thing, it's probably not too different to the others as we think. But yeah, it's generally like a generosity that seems unattached to anything coming back. No expectation of it being repaid, giving. and but also not selfless, not completely like being a doormat and letting people walk over you. There's like the selfless giver, and then there's kind of pragmatic giver, which is, yeah, I can give this, or I can't do a week of podcasts with you, James. I've got a busy week. Like at the end of the day, I've got to protect some stuff that I got to. Yeah. So that's the traditional concept of givers in that book. But the fascinating thing I think about is really if you expand your thinking and you think long-term and you think very broadly, normally like other people's advantages become your advantages too. Right. So part of the context is, right, you're a member of our community, right? The constant student. And the better you go, like the more people can understand, oh, wow, there are communities out there that you can tap into that will help you just bounce things off and help you get set up with a project or anything like that. And then that is good. And then that's the kind of world I want to live in. That people do that. And also it's very enjoyable and meaningful to like contribute to someone who has like direction, stuff like that, and ambition and a dream or anything like that, just across the board. Very meaningful. So I do get something out of it anyway, if I help someone like that. And I know that people have felt the same way about me. So even though the giver thing is almost a bit tricky because it's actually, it's almost like just probably what changes is like the delay or how clearly you can relate the benefit received by the giver to like the gift given by the giver.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I gave it my best shot.
No.
See, that philosophy makes all my behaviors make sense.
Yes.
It's actually, we're all rising tide lifts all boats. We all have aligned interests. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard that like similar thing, like with the giving, even just as like kind of business idea. Like I know Gary Vee's had that book called Jab, Right Hook or something. It's something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of businesses do that, whether it's on social media or whatever, where they like just give you like free videos on YouTube or like free content about this topic or whatever to develop the relationship. And then there's no expectation of a return with those. Like they're not expecting you to come and donate them money like afterwards.
Yeah.
But they are secretly hoping, I guess, that when they actually do release something, that you like care about them and you're invested in what they're doing enough so that you'll go and buy their course or sign up to whatever it might be.
The other thing with that, you come back to dating and would you like to go on 6 dates with me? You know, if you say that to someone, they're like, do I want to go on 6 dates with this guy? I'm not sure if I want to do that. But you go, all right, you want to go on 1 date? No expectations of a second, third, or fourth. You're like, oh yeah, I can commit to that. And so what that strategy does, inbound marketing and all that sort of stuff, is that is what relationship building is. It's breaking things down to a small enough step that someone can commit to. If it's a significant person, like in the business world or something that you're trying to get in touch with, almost like giving them a LinkedIn message or an email that they can just reply to, that they would reply to, is almost like a great first step. It's almost better than having nothing.
Yeah.
Sending them like a big pitch and a dump. That's interesting to think about. And even with those, even the ones you're talking about, even the people like, I'm sure they do hope that they pay, but even the ones that don't end up paying, they probably still spread awareness of that person's brand. Like, hey, Seth Godin or Gary Vee has this free YouTube video. I just send you the YouTube video. And you've never heard of Gary Vee before. You're now aware of him and you've got a relationship with him. It's familiarity. How often do you land on a website and spend $1,000 with someone you've never heard of, a product you've never heard of? Not that often. But if you've heard of them before and stuff like that, you've got that familiarity, then you're more likely to buy. Gary Vee, like I see that guy everywhere. I'll buy his course or whatever, or I'll pay him to be my media marketing manager, whatever. And again, you come back to relationships. It's the same thing. Like you see someone around a lot, you have a couple of touch points with them, builds trust.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's super cool. And I think even myself, you can relate it. Let's say your personal brand, like, is how not only are you perceived in person or whatever, like, or online on maybe you have your own personal Instagram for like business related stuff or whatever. Maybe you have your own website. But your personal brand is also how you interact with people. What do you like when you go and watch the footy at someone's house or stuff like that? So like this kind of giving thing is not just for like when you're trying to network with someone or like online advice or like even in a business, like offering value by like releasing content or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely about, this person said they were interested in coming along to this event that I've previously been to. Let's connect them with the organizer or things like that you can really like positively impact people.
Yeah, majorly. Like I believe the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And I noticed that in so many ways. Like even when I look at people I play soccer with, and like I realize the similarities between maybe how they play soccer, because a lot of them are school friends or my brothers. So I notice similarities between the way they play soccer and the way they like their work ethic and everything like that. And it's hard to switch things on and off.
Mm.
And it's very hard to do it for a long time. So it's funny, even though networking can be a dirty word, it's what I'm happy to use, because every conclusion I think of, every time I think about it, the way to do it most effectively is just at the end of the day, become a better person.
Yeah.
Holistically.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the cleverest books of all time is obviously How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm.
For that reason, the title is, how do you get all these dirty tricks and
Yeah.
get your way, get people to do your way. And then not to spoil the book, the whole premise of the book is, unfortunately, you got to be genuinely interested in them.
Yeah.
And not even expect something when you just show interest in them.
Mm.
With that, that's it. And start there.
Mm.
And then things can snowball because it's, that person's just interested in me. So it's funny, but it's relieving. Because so much you feel like, I've got to get in touch and I've got to advance my career and this and that. And then you realize, the whole way along, I can just be myself. It'll actually be the most effective, which is not easy, especially today, because the environment we're in, there's always shiny objects dangling. So it's not always like easy, but it's like as often as you can be reminded of that, I think is powerful. But yeah, I think the general call to action is like the G word, like genuine just makes things flow and it's effortless because you just be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I liked what you said there about like how you do anything is how you do everything. I've heard that before. And I think that is really key, because I've heard like this one podcast where I first heard that many years ago now. The guy was saying like, when you go to the toilet, how do you like leave the bathroom when you've finished in there? Do you make sure it's all like cleaner than when you left it? How do you like go wash the dishes? Do you do a good job, or do you just do them good enough so the next person will have to deal with your problem? All these kinds of things are like, it's not just going to be a once-off thing. Someone that cleans their dishes really well is probably also going to do other things in their life like really well. And so I think that's super important, because it's something now that I like watch out for when I'm doing like even menial tasks. Like, how am I doing this? Because this is reflective of like how I'm going to do things like at work, or like how am I going to, complete a project, because there might be little things that you just, I don't need to do that because that's fine. I'll just skip that bit. But it's putting things away in the right place. Are we going to, when you finish a project, you're going to check what it is like a few times before you send it off, that there's no spelling errors, and make sure like everything's in the exact right place. Things like that. Just doing like that 1-2% extra in every little thing adds like a lot to everything that you do, I think. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, well, it's a great thought. You've prompted me to rethink that for myself and get better at it. So thank you.
Sweet.
Be paying attention to everything.
Obviously, you can't think of it all the time, but I think there's absolutely.
But it's a very good frame. It's a very good frame. And even if someone listened to this and did that for the next day, that's very positive. Because I do feel like all these positive attitudes, if you want, or approaches, like I'm going to do more of that. And you don't always follow through, but I think over time they all kind of sink in and they all add up.
Yeah, totally.
Long-term trend is trending towards being better. Yeah, in that way. So it's honestly a really great attitude, I think.
I definitely agree. So let's go back to your book now. Let's talk about, this is like quite a unique concept. I haven't heard of a book written like this before, where you've got like, sometimes there's like the one author and then there's a couple guys that like do like the foreword. So there's 3 authors on the front or whatever. But this is not that. I think you have 8 different people that have each written a section of the book. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah. And I guess Scott is my high school friend who ended up we did like nonprofit work together, and then he did his own startup, Espresso, which is a great up and coming Aussie company. And we like have always been interested in education, from starting to do our own very self-directed projects, like things we're choosing for ourselves to do. And we just found, wow, we learned so much. There are great places to learn. You get a lot. We both went to uni. He loved uni. I didn't have the best time, but you undoubtedly still learn things. But I think the most effective ways to learn, especially in this day and age where you can create things more easily than ever before, is projects and picking your own challenges to do. And I guess our mission together is to try and help catalyze that approach to education and making it more accessible. Because there's a lot of pieces to pull together, but it's logistically easier. So it's not packaged up for people is the problem. Like your podcast, you have to decide to do it. Then you have to find the guests. You have to figure out how to do it. And you just start. You're right. So how do you package it up, make it easier? That was the inspiration for the book. So we cared about education. We'll theme the book around like something useful for young people when they're leaving high school, because that's like a pretty big social problem. But yeah, we wanted to make it a learning experience for us and the co-authors. And I wanted to learn myself. It's the first book I've published and will be self-published. And I wanted to learn, like, all right, how do I do this self-publishing thing? What's involved? I really didn't know. I'd been writing stuff for ages. And I was like, oh, this is good for me too.
Yeah.
And we just found basically friends, literally just people we knew who we thought, yeah, they'd be interested in doing this. People who are just intentional, all young people, all young Australians. Like if I'd known you a year ago, I might have asked you, for example, maybe in the future. So it was literally like that, just like showing like, yeah, really anyone can do it. And then 18 and Lost. So it's about obviously that awkward journey after leaving high school. Most people have a lot of challenges or things to think about and process, even if you get through it unscathed. But it seems like everyone goes through a bit of something at that time. And kind of big problem we are not very good at ferrying people across from the high school environment to like the rest of the world they're in. We really let them swim across a very choppy waters and just see who survives. It's just not the kind of the world I want to live in.
No. Yeah.
So that's probably the broader ambition is, all right, what's good for that? Sharing people's stories, like 8 very different people. And there's a surprise 9th as well. All those different stories and getting them shared gives you like, oh, wow, that's what it was like for those people. Because you can't summarize everyone's experience. There's no one experience or one way of doing things. But by giving 8 or 9 different examples, we thought that can help. Maybe it'll resonate with someone. Like one of those stories will resonate.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I felt that way too, for example. And it's not just me. Because we don't talk about things like that in depth very often. So I wrote about leaving high school, my struggles at university, not really pursuing the things I was actually interested in, but trying to take a safe road and how that felt. And I called it like 6 out of 10 life. Like not so bad that you make a change, but not so good that you're enjoying things. You're just really right in the middle. And yeah, and to be honest, like a lot of my family and friends wouldn't know that stuff until they read it.
Yeah.
Because like it doesn't really come up.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing. That's why we wanted to take a storytelling approach. But yeah, ultimately, like the concept was pretty cool. We're pretty proud of it because it was like we gave everyone like 5 weeks to write their chapter. And that created the accountability to get through writing a book. So we reduced the workload because you just got to deliver 1 chapter. It was their stories, which for most people is pretty intimidating. I think the group really helps with the follow through because like when you got to do things and other people are relying on you, it creates way more incentive. If it's just me on my own, if I don't do this, no one's going to mind, as books often are. And yeah, I believe the writing, very proud of everyone's chapters. So it's one of the things I care about a lot is helping more people learn what they're capable of through writing. Book's a good one because it's very tangible. I did this and I became an author. So it's a really great journey to go on. And I encourage as many kind of, especially young people to take up that challenge and we're trying to facilitate it in our work too, like more people doing this sort of stuff.
For sure. So with the book, were there any key themes between people leaving high school, leaving uni, whatever it is? Because obviously, yeah, like you said, it's a very choppy time, right? Leaving high school, you've got to pick one thing to do, which is like, almost everyone is like, I've got no idea. What are some key themes from the book and even common problems that people had and how did they go about dealing with those?
Yeah, great question. Towards the conclusion, I unpack the 5 big ones I noticed, but I also I'd love to hear like when people read it, what things they picked up that I didn't pick up. But one of the key things was that the people who are not super true to like their intuition, this is what I feel like I should be doing, like what their real interests are at that time and things like that. The authors that didn't follow those kind of key interests looked like they struggled a bit. like really like an emotional, somewhat psychological level. For example, me wanted to be a filmmaker, ended up studying psychology, didn't do much film because I was like, just lacked confidence and didn't know how to go be proactive about getting experience and lots of reasons. And I didn't feel great at that time because there's a gap between what I feel like I should be doing and what I was actually doing with my time. So when that happens, you kind of like, it's normally you don't feel great. Whereas say someone like Scott, whose story in there, the best thing for him, he realized, was probably to start with engineering. And he really made that choice himself. Whereas I was looking for a safer path. So that there's kind of some of the stories fall into a bit more like Scott's, where they chose their way, and some were a bit like mine, where this is what I think I should be doing.
Yeah.
Not what do I really want to do. And this is not even the top thing I'd pick to do. Or I picked it for the wrong reason. Like I picked it for an extrinsically motivated reason, which is the motivation comes from outside. It'll impress everyone. If I'm if I'm an engineer or I'm a psychologist, I'll make a lot of money. That's extrinsic, like a reward that comes from outside. Whereas intrinsic is, I'm so into like psychology.
Yeah.
Or I'm so into engineering. Or I love the people I'm meeting doing this. That's much more kind of intrinsically derived. So that was probably like the biggest takeaway. And then I think what other themes? Well, the other one, the best one, is no one predicted what they'd be doing.
Yeah.
By the time they were sitting down writing the book.
Yeah. Wow.
And that includes Jordan was our oldest author. He was 27, and he's got a chart. He drew a nice graphic in the book about all the different things he's done. The guy's had the most diverse career of any person I've ever seen ever. So he definitely didn't predict what he'd be doing. And even Gabby, who's our youngest author, I think she intended to go on a gap year last year, but COVID. So started studying law and then didn't anticipate becoming author of a book at 18. So the unpredictability of it is nuts too. Like I didn't predict I'd end up trying to do entrepreneurial projects. I left school wanting to be a filmmaker. So no one actually had the clear idea. It's kind of like the big lie. Like you're picking something thinking, this is my path. And it's unlikely to be your path because most people take some sort of pivot. And that's probably the healthy thing if you take a pivot, because it means you're discovering things. That's good. Like you're not growing if you're not discovering things you didn't anticipate. If you can see everything ahead, and that's when we learn, that's the age I'm going to get promotion, and that's that, like completely linear and no surprises. Like it feels safe, but it's not really what you want. It's what you think you want. And so actually like not knowing is a bit healthier, but feeling comfortable not knowing is the challenge. Whereas the people who are like dead set, like lasered in, I'm just going to do that. And that's all. Like I'm going to be a doctor or I'm going to be a whatever. Like they might end up doing it, but I just think you should always have your eyes open to other stuff because you'll learn and you can always keep doing whatever, being a doctor or being a lawyer or being a builder or whatever it is. But discovering new things within that is really what makes it a journey, makes it exciting. And so the other pattern is probably everyone comes out, like you said, thinking, what do I want to do? And having some anxiety over that. And it's because I guess we put them in an environment where we make them feel like they should know. That's what our culture is now. Everyone is made to think that they should know. That's actually the problem. Knowing is not actually the problem, in my opinion. It's feeling like you think you should know, which is a bit of a mouthful, is like actually most concerning. And to bring this full circle, I couldn't tell you 1 year from now what ventures I'll be involved in, where I'll be at, how much money I'll have in the bank or any of that. I can't predict it. All the things I'm doing have such open loops. There's so much that could happen. Some, I don't know, maybe the Prime Minister will read the book and say, I want you to do this program, or I don't know. I know, but I don't or it could be negative things. It could be like, I don't know, all the business stuff and the crashes and I don't know, but I'm not really worried about it because I guess I've had enough experiences that have taught me that the worst things that can happen you can't learn so much from. And life is actually pretty simple at the end of the day. So everything we try and all the achievements we go for are just like scoring an extra goal, but you're already ahead. It's my philosophy. And so like, there's actually not much to be that worried about. Cause I guess I feel normally feel very like satisfied with who I am and how I treat people, and trying to remember that's actually the most important thing, not like where I'm at by 26 or 27 or any of those things, all that kind of nonsense. Makes it just okay. Makes whatever happens to be pretty okay, like in the long run. And so that's the difference between someone who's maybe 18 right now and thinking, shit, what am I going to do with my life? Or finishing uni going, shit, what am I going to do with my life? And I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder what I'm going to do with my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't have any more certainty than they do.
Mm.
Yeah. Is the point.
Yeah. That's really cool. And I think I like what you're saying there, because I think there's like distinction almost between having like your eyes open and like kind of the light, like the light in your head or whatever switched on, and like you're like seeing things and you're discovering stuff. And even if that is just in your job or wherever you are in uni, seeing what's out there and going and exploring rather than just, this is what I'm doing. That's it. Like, and just close up to all possibility. Because I think the world's open and ready for it to be discovered almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's much more fun. And it makes it much more interesting when you can go out there and try stuff and you have some passions and interests. Yeah.
Definitely. It's probably a bit different as well, like the generations. So say our parents' age, it's just much more different. But we got a cultural hangover. It's not necessarily worse. In a lot of instances, they had less choices, maybe. Definitely less choices on average. And so it's just pick a pathway. If I can go to uni, that's pretty good, because that's what normally is going to get you a good job. And so that makes sense. Now it's so different. The uni stuff is still there, but then you got 500 million other things that like can be done, and the internet changes like what your capabilities are, but there's like a fraction of the awareness there should be about that. And you know, and also because of like the way the future is changing, everything like that, technology and AI and all those scary buzzwords that are in how all your jobs are going away and all that, which change, like things will change and adapt. I don't think I think people will be able to adapt. So I just think that there's a real opportunity now to approach it as a discovery period, not like a feel successful and safe as quickly as possible period, because that is constraining, which I don't find that healthy. And there's definitely like a broader set of possibilities, but obviously that can be intimidating. That can be overwhelming. And so it's not like, it's hard to come up with a linear Seth's endorsement, you know, that he wrote this blurb on the back of the book. I'll read it to you. The big lie is that people have figured out their future. In this powerful anonymous book, you'll discover that it's a journey, not a plan, and that you can lean into the possibilities that lie ahead. I just think that's just so well put. Like, that's a great quote on its own, irrespective of the book. It's a journey, not a plan. Like at the end of the day, I always say, like, when I look back, I measure like my quality of life in stories.
Yeah.
Obviously, not money, because in the end, there'll be an end. I don't know when. And I won't be counting like how many dollars I've got in the bank or things like that. But what really is like the best currency is just having all these stories and all this cool shit that you look back and did. And obviously having enough money to eat and do stuff and reinvest into other things, it's like pretty good too along the way. It's part of that picture. And so I'm writing a book, which is my life, but just forwards.
Yeah, that
makes sense. Like a story's got to be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so cool. And I like what you touched on it briefly there about like, you're going to die someday. So you want to have these stories that you have to tell. And I think, yeah, that's something that I think about often too. And I think when you think about like, I was listening to this in a book actually the other day. It was called The Comfort Crisis. So it's about this guy who...
Oh, that's a great title of the book.
Yeah.
So
what he does, this guy, does this massive challenge where he pretty much goes into the forest with two of his hunting friends with like some snacks and like heaps of like luggage and tents and whatever. And their mission is just to go out there and like hunt like an animal. I think it's They call it a carrot. I don't really know what that is. I'm guessing it's like similar to a deer. But
Everything's similar to a deer. They get yeah.
yeah, it's like, go out and get this thing and bring it back and eat that as like pretty much their sole source of food, and then come back after a month. And very interesting book. But one of the things he was saying was these cultures that I think that's actually a country in. I think they have like quite a low like wealth to GDP kind of index, but they're one of the happiest countries in the world. And one of the theories around the reason why is because they get taught about this idea of death, primary school, high school, so they just get reminded that you're going to die. So like some people, this particular country, he was saying they really focus on it. So they have a plan for where they want to die, what's it going to look like. And they've really considered it in great depth.
Wow.
Whereas so some people maybe in the Western world get right to the end and then they're like, oh, that's what happened. I've ended up here. And so I think it's so key to consider that, because I think whether it's what career you're going to choose, food are you going to seek out, what kind of things what are you going to spend your time doing? If you reflect on that, you plan out your life and you're going to die someday, that there is actually some kind of urgency to doing these things. They're not just going to happen themselves. I think that brings a lot of clarity, and especially what you're saying about like the extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. I think some of the extrinsic ones might start to fade away a little bit when you realize
death strips them back.
Yeah.
Death strips them back completely. I don't know if you've heard this, but my favorite question is, what would you do if you had 5 years to live? What would you do differently? Like, how would you live differently? It's my favorite question. Not everyone always asks if you had a day to live. Yeah, okay. Obviously, I'd say hi to James, tell my mum I love her.
Yeah.
Go to the beach, have a party. Like, it's too easy. But when it's 5 years, you still got like finances to manage and ration out over that time. But it's so close, you can't ignore it too. And you got time to do something like meaningful that'll probably impact things after you're gone, because you'll be very conscious of the fact that you're going to be gone. And it sounds a little morbid, but I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's morbid. So what we do in the West is put death out of the picture and deny it exists. Most people are living as if they're never going to die. That's like when I look around, most people in the West living as if they're never going to die. Their behavior doesn't make sense to me, considering that they'll be dead one day, which is struggling for 10 years just to get a mortgage. If that's an eighth of your life or a tenth of your life, and that was the only thing you got towards in that time at expense of like everything else that's good about life. But that 5-year question, like everyone I've asked, like it just strips back all the extrinsic stuff, because you're not worried about how people are going to look at you. Everything about human nature is about constraining attention to something. That's like we have finite attention. And so why so many people struggle, even though this is logical, is that in the world we're in, the environment we're in, like all the shiny objects and everything, just it sucks our attention into that. In the same way, social media will always direct your attention to what's in your feed, even though I don't want to just be scrolling my phone right now. So we don't have that. Discipline is like really hard if you want to apply it to everything you're looking at all the time. It's again like, oh no, remind myself, don't think about that. Don't think about that. And so obviously death is just like everything else, which is it constrains your focus, but it probably constrains your focus better because it's the reality. Death is the reality that we'll have to face at some point.
Yeah.
You can't lie about that. And anything contrary is actually the big kind of fluff ball. Like that's like the distraction. So yeah, I think that I've heard that sort of story about the different cultures that do actually centralize it and normalize it and make it like, yeah, okay, this is the constraint. These are the constraints. So what are you going to do? And it just changes everything. That question for me just changes everything. And this podcast geared towards career and probably when we talked about networking today, it absolutely impacts how you think about those things. It absolutely impacts how you think about those things. Because you think about, oh, I'm not going to focus on doing everything in a transactional way if I won't be here in 5 years. You want that journey to like be meaningful, and you want it to like be worthwhile, good relationships that you work with. And you don't have time for people who are not that.
Yeah.
Too. Oh, I just want to hang out with this person because they can get me this or that. And you don't have time for that because you're gone in 5 years. So I try to remind myself of that question like as often as possible, because it is a massive release. It's just a massive release. Even thinking about it again now, thank you for prompting me, like unintentionally. But everything I got, like launching a book at the moment, all these things, and right now, it's calming. It's so fascinating, and yeah, it's definitely like missing from Western culture in a big way. We don't. It's not normally in the career guidance books and all that sort of stuff, and high school, and
Yeah.
but I have a feeling like in the coming decades, it might, because things are going to change so much with technology and the world and the digital world and crypto and all these things, just going to shift things around so much. Flying cars and
Yeah.
that's coming,
Mm.
and it's coming, and so that's going to force us to rethink the way we do a lot of things. So it'll be fascinating to see how big those changes might be. Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. Totally. Yeah, I think that's super cool. All right. And the last question for you today, Joe, is if
Yep.
you were going to graduate university again, or maybe even start
Wow.
university, you can choose.
Yep.
What's your one piece of advice?
Yeah. Wow. It's like the question we asked a lot around the book is what advice you'd give your 18-year-old self.
Mm.
And I think I can say the same thing to both the version of me starting university and the version of me ending university. Make the most of it.
Mm.
Don't settle for any less.
Yeah, I like that.
Because even leaving, like whatever's coming next, and that's a big focus on what you have again, make the most of it.
Mm.
Whatever you can access and start with, make the most of it. And if it was at university, I didn't make the most of it. Like I wish I could go back, and not really, because I learned a lot, which is applied, made me more focused in life after, and make the most of it. I think that's it. Good question.
Yeah, perfect. But yeah, thanks so much, Joe, for coming on today. It's a fantastic conversation. Much appreciated.
No.
So if people are going to come and find you on social media, purchase your book, all that stuff, where's the best place?
Yeah, I'm someone with many internet links, so I'm always very careful with this. I'll concentrate on the book. It's 18andlost.com.au, and is just AND. And that's just the best place with everything to do with the book. And that's a good kind of door opener to everything that I'm involved in and working on. And then I guess, other than that, I have a website and I have a podcast. They both got the same name, with Joe Wehbe. And my last name is Wehbe for Wehbe. And yeah, podcast in that name and a website there if people want to land there, which has links to any social things too. So
Yeah.
I'd concentrate on those because it's easy I'm not very good at consolidating it all.